Hello everyone. So today we have with us Dr. Gerald Katzman. He is a very well-renowned pediatrician from the USA. He is a clinical associate professor at Wayne State School of Medicine in the USA in the Department of Pediatrics. And Dr. Katzman has worked on various articles and publications, and he has provided us with many helpful resources for parents and for to-be parents, which I will be putting up in the caption below this video. So do have a look at them and hope it helps a few of you.
Hello, my name is Dr. Gerald Katzman, and I was invited by Dr. Sarnaik to speak with her audience today. My topic for today is child development leading to the pursuit of virtues and the avoidance of vices, but mainly we're going to emphasize parenting as a way to achieve our goal. I think we can all agree that optimizing social, emotional, moral, and cognitive development for all children is a goal towards which most individuals would agree is really worth striving for. Such an accomplishment would actually solve many problems that humankind confronts today. And we're going to discuss exactly how that is. It will really prevent things like crimes and wars and genocide and mental illnesses and avoidable conflicts. So we're going to go ahead and start the discussion and work our way through the various milestones of healthy growth and development of children as they become adults.
Sorry to interrupt you, Dr. Katzman. So Dr. Katzman is like a very renowned personality from the USA, and just like he has just started talking about, his topic for the day, you can just have a look at a post which I have posted about his resume and his work and his publications, which are like tremendous, and I could just go on reading his CV for hours. And yeah, like whatever I talk about him is not going to, satisfy what he exactly is. His work is amazing. And I'm so excited to be hearing about parenting and all the parenting techniques from you, Dr. Katzman. It's like an honor to have you here with me. Please continue, and we'll discuss about it later.
Okay, well, I think we're going to start with the concept of authoritative parenting. And if we could share the first slide, which I'm going to do. I think you can see it now. So experts generally agree that authoritative parenting is critical to the healthy mental development of children. With this type of parenting, confrontation with responsiveness characterizes the approach to discipline. Confrontation involves identifying and counseling regarding misbehavior. At the same time, recognition and management of stress associated with misbehavior and certain life events is regularly attended to by the caretaker in order to prevent long-lasting adverse mental sequelae or occurrences. Shaming, coercion, intimidation, and corporal punishment are not utilized as they are in authoritarian parenting. Let's see. This is to avoid the toxic stress that is the product of preventable adverse childhood experiences. With authoritative parenting, communication is set up between parent and child and leads to healthy interpersonal attunement. And we're going to discuss what interpersonal attunement is in just a minute. And that serves developmental progress. Unfortunately, authoritarian parenting is often passed from generation to generation. Adverse results from that include mental illness and violent behaviors, and they're often seen. For this reason, an active effort to break the cycle of authoritarian parenting and teach authoritative parenting is really vital. This effort may start prenatally, but it will be talking about ongoing educational efforts that parents who are not familiar with authoritative parenting can refer to and educate themselves on how to approach this type of parenting. Now, I mentioned that we would discuss interpersonal attunement. With authoritative parenting, reciprocal communication between the parent and the child is established. In the newborn, this begins with on-face, which is really eye-to-eye contact, especially during feedings. Later, it may involve reciprocal smiling, singing, talking lovingly to the infant, and play activities before elementary communication with language is possible. The interpersonal attunement that develops describes how the caretaker and child are responsive to one another's emotional needs, thoughts, and moods. When well developed, this interpersonal neurobiology, which is a fancy name for two brains being connected, it involves a resonance where the thoughts, needs, and feelings of the other are regularly appreciated. And once this occurs, this type of communication, appropriate responses often are the result of such attunement and lead to the strengthening of the bond between the caretaker and the child. Now, attachment is a topic that we need to discuss, but first I want to talk about imprinting that you see over here. And imprinting describes a situation where a young animal comes to recognize another animal, person, or thing as a person or object of habitual trust, often shortly after birth. And there have been pictures actually where little ducklings have been put next to a dog right after their birth. And if the dog gets up and goes for a walk, all the ducklings are going to follow. So for animals, at any rate, the first thing they see after birth is that they're going to get attached to that. In humans, we usually use the term attachment to describe the trusting relationship that develops between child and caregiver. This trusting relationship strengthens over a period of months to years due to ongoing interpersonal attunement with caregivers being responsive to the child's needs. In order for attachment to be successful, an initial bonding of love and tenderness the caretaker feels for the infant needs to occur. As Andrea Hollingsworth has stated, over time, secure, attuned attachments with other persons may enable us to love more and fear less, rendering us progressively more capable of sharing in the suffering of others and increasing the likelihood that we will take action to alleviate their misery. It is these secure attachments that allow caregivers, teachers, and mentors to influence the child's developing mindfulness or intrapersonal attunement. So that'll be our next topic, is intrapersonal attunement. Now, intrapersonal attunement or mindfulness involves noticing and respecting oneself. It refers to a self-regulation of attention where one pays attention to the events of the moment. This process requires an orientation to learn values, and these values are represented in the outer areas, the cortical areas of the brain. Intrapersonal attunement enhances the capacity for emotional empathy, and we're going to talk about emotional empathy a little later. And especially if certain values related to a particular circumstance are internalized or incorporated in memory. It is clearly necessary to provide a moral learning process that will enhance emotional empathy and serve as the impetus for helping behaviors. Developing a moral compass should insulate persons from blindly following a group who are caught up in inadvisable behaviors. This moral learning should provide protection from what is known as de-individuation, which is the term you see right here, so characteristic of authoritarian societies where one person will follow the whole group no matter how bad the activity the group is involved in. So the next thing we need to talk about is, for intrapersonal attunement, how do we proceed with moral learning, which will guide what we're mindful about. Now, moral learning can be transmitted in a number of ways, and later you're going to get a list of references that will show you what you can do to orient children to various ethical issues. So basically, the exercises involve either classical or operant conditioning. And those are fancy words, but classical conditioning means it's something that they see right away, and just by passing by, and you assume it's understood. Operant conditioning is when you give the child a reward for understanding and going ahead and doing good behavior. Every effort should be made to eliminate the corporal punishment and shaming that are commonly used by, quote, educators in certain situations. And that, of course, includes screaming and yelling, too. These are not advisable. Such reinforcement often results in repressed fear and anger. And that fear and anger serves as a well of energy waiting to be discharged on targets that may be established by false narratives. So you'll see that in a chart that I will present at the end. Moral learning is taught by either dilemma ethics or plain moral facts. Well, dilemma ethics is something like if you have 7 people in the middle of the ocean in a boat, there's only enough food for 4 people, what do you do? So that's a moral dilemma. Plain moral facts is something like you should not steal, you should not commit adultery, you should be honest, you shouldn't be dishonest, shouldn't lie. Those are plain moral facts. And several vehicles are commonly used for teaching both with dilemma ethics and plain moral facts. These vehicles include the modeling of caring behaviors, reading stories with a moral, and human relations programs for children. Moral decision-making that results from such learning becomes emotional, intuitive, and automatic when dealing with a familiar issue. Alternatively, decision-making may involve conscious, controlled reasoning based on prior or new learning when an unfamiliar moral issue is encountered. And that's why all this background with stories and modeling of caring behavior and human relations is so important, because when something new comes up, you have to refer to those to make the most ethical answer and conduct the most ethical behavior. Now, so I want to go through the couple major areas where moral learning can occur. Now, there was a book called The Altruistic Personality by Samuel and Pearl Oliner, and they found that parents who modeled caring behaviors inside and outside the family were more likely to have children who would take significant risk to help others. Specific suggestions and techniques for modeling desirable behaviors are available through a number of sources, and that will be in your reference list. One is healthychildren.org, where there are some nice videos that illustrate that. And there are suggestions that include pointing out sharing among adults, showing ways to calm down, teaching children to express their feelings, and paying attention to good behavior. The other one is at classschools.com. There are suggestions for modeling behavior that involve doing good deeds, being patient in lines, respecting others and their property, and being a good loser. Other sites also contribute constructive ideas, and they'll be in your list too. Now next, a very important area is reading stories with a moral and that teach a lesson. And a very important point to emphasize is literacy is key to all learning. Early vocabulary growth comes with parents speaking frequently with their children. Brain growth is impaired when less words are spoken to children, even if they don't understand it. Early in infancy, it's nice to talk to the child as much as possible using different words. The 0 to 3 program, which is available online, and others provide parents ideas for nurturing thinking and language skills. Unfortunately, across the United States, less than 50% of children are read to daily by parents. The Head Start program in the USA provides a vehicle for disadvantaged children to catch up. However, the program is inadequately funded and staffed to serve all of the many children in need. And again, that's the situation in the USA. I can't comment on the situation in other countries, but I'm sure there is progress that could be made in this area. This lack of learning and impaired literacy in the early years may hinder the attempt to transmit plain moral facts through reading and telling stories. That is why promoting early literacy has the potential of enhancing the moral and social emotional development of children. There are many resources that caregivers and schools may use to promote moral learning as children mature. For the lessons to be appreciated and internalized, it is obvious that comprehension through early literacy and improving literacy is mandatory. Now, the last area to enhance moral learning that we're going to talk about is, let's see, we have to go down here, is human relations programs for children. Now, individual differences and experience in human relations with children is an example of a compendium that outlines exercises at various grade levels to sensitize children to appropriate interaction with others. And that is a program that was developed in Wisconsin in actually the late 1970s. There are many new modern programs, and hopefully your area has these, and students are exposed to these human relations programs regularly in the school system. Multiple goals of the exercises include furthering self-esteem, supporting virtues, avoiding vices, the control of emotions, and awareness of human similarities and respect for individual differences. A number of recent resources are available to teach respectful human relations. Many school systems do an excellent job in this area. However, it should be emphasized that there is a degree of what we call moral entrepreneurship in all these programs. Such moral entrepreneurship involves expressing an opinion as to what is virtuous behavior and what behavior should be avoided, i.e. vices. In this regard, virtues are defined as those traits of character that blunt mere self-interest so that one can see and actively promote the interests of others. In contradistinction, vices represent those traits of characters that unleash mere self-interest so that one fails or ignores to see the interests of others. Certain cultures may vary somewhat in their concept of virtues and vices. Teaching and agreeing on plain moral facts should be achievable. Now, The result of this increasing literacy and this increasing ability to comprehend complicated issues should result in a resistance to false narratives and hopefully nonviolent conflict resolution. False narratives have classically been a vehicle by which societies have attempted to direct members to accomplish their own selfish purposes. Such false narratives may distort history, promote false beliefs, and propagate negative feelings towards ethnic and racial groups for political purposes. It is anticipated that healthy psychosocial development that includes authoritative parenting and moral learning will shield persons from internalizing these false narratives and contribute to resilience in stressful times. Higher levels of literacy developed through the educational process should further facilitate the process of, quote, reading between the lines. There are communication skills that include attentive listening, assertive statements, and clear opinions that are essential to the success of nonviolent conflict resolution. Human relations program for children should provide the basis for the objective thinking required to reduce enmities or conflicts that have developed. Now, I want to say a word about emotional empathy, because emotional empathy refers to the vicarious sharing of emotions. That when someone else is sad, you're going to be sad. When someone else is happy, you're going to be happy. The ability to feel the emotional states of others is based on the quality of interpersonal and intrapersonal attunement experienced during development. And that's why all the teaching methods that can be brought to bear as the child develops is really so important. Dr. Helen Reese has developed the concepts of empathic concern and empathic capacity. It is secure, attuned attachment, modeled behaviors, reading stories with a moral, and the teach a lesson, and human relations program for children that contribute to enhancing emotional empathy. Unfortunately, interpersonal relationships marked by conflict, insecurity, and distrust can cause us to feel threatened, emotionally deregulated, and closed off to empathetic connection with others. There are many examples where recurrent maltreatment in childhood that results in fear and anger produces a stifling of emotional empathy. The presence of cognitive empathy without emotional empathy is characteristic of what is known as psychopathy, where ruthless persons use others as objects to satisfy their own selfish needs. Now, lastly, in the discussion, we're going to talk about compassion and helping behaviors. This is what all these stages and all these efforts are all about. Emotional empathy allows one to feel the suffering of others. Moral learning creates the impetus to care about such suffering. The result of feeling one's suffering and caring about it is the desire to relieve the discomfort. That desire we define as compassion. It is compassion that leads to helping behaviors that ultimately relieve the suffering. The propensity to work towards helping behaviors is clearly dependent on the quality of experiences during psychosocial development. I want to just sum up with a little narrative, and then we're going to go to a couple charts to illustrate in a sketchy fashion, but in a direct fashion, what we've been talking about. So we're going to look at some flow charts in just a minute. It is clear that optimizing psychosocial development is not really a simple endeavor. It's complicated. If we are to achieve parenting for a peaceful world, which is the title of a book which by Dr. Grilly, it's significant initiatives are in order if we're going to get there. Parenting orientation prenatally has been shown to be effective, and it's a good tool. It takes some resources to incorporate that into a prenatal program. Pediatricians can provide ongoing support to children and parents in the office if their services are readily available to everybody. Certain genetically transmitted conditions, mental disorders, congenital problems, and injuries requiring ongoing medical and community resources for the best possible outcome. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child could provide a vehicle to further developmental education globally, but I might add that this is not being followed in the way it was initially intended, so services to various countries around the world are not readily available yet. There is much work to be done as the child advances through the school system. That work includes contributions from teachers, theologians, pediatricians, political advisors, and other community members who serve as role models for civility and responsible behavior. Indeed, it takes a village if psychosocial development of children is to be optimized. For progress to be made, countries need to provide the person power and financial resources to facilitate traversing the steps outlined in the flowcharts that I'm about to show. Prioritizing efforts to achieve such progress is a challenge for all societies. So first I'm going to show the flowchart. Well, we talked about the Parenting for a Peaceful World. That was our conclusion, and it takes a village. First, I'm going to show the flowchart on benevolent mindfulness. And Dr. Sarnaik's picture in my thing is right in the middle, so I'm going to minimize the picture for a minute. So anyways, we start out, let's see where we are here. In benevolent mindfulness, we're talking about starting out with authoritative parenting. And with authoritative parenting, there is hopefully interpersonal attunement. And with this improved sharing of emotions and thoughts, secure attachment develops. And with secure attachment in the sharing of emotions, that helps to develop emotional empathy. And of course, with secure attachment, there is then a learning process that develops, that results in intrapersonal attunement and hopefully benevolent mindfulness. But there are several ways that that can be propagated with literacy. There can be reading stories with a moral and that teach a lesson. There can be human relations programs for children in the school system. And then, of course, at home, and also with other mentors, again, pediatricians, teachers, community people, that there can be modeling of caring behavior. It is best, again, if that starts in the home. So with the development of emotional empathy and with intrapersonal attunement, with the two together, there can be the development of compassion, which is a motivating force in developing helping behaviors. The hope is that with this entire gestalt here, especially with human relations program for children, and the improved literacy, there will be an understanding what narratives are false and a resistance to incorporating them into the thinking process. And also, because of human relations programs, supporting respectful relations and an appreciation of individual differences and a respect for individual differences, if there are conflicts, they hopefully will be resolved non-violently. Now, I do want to mention and emphasize the problems with authoritarian parenting. And again, we mentioned before the repressed fear and anger, because with corporal punishment, shaming, coercion, the child begins to fear the caretaker, knows that the punishment is going to be severe, so sort of keeps quiet, but internalizes the repressed fear and anger. And that repressed fear and anger, of course, we call toxic stress, and it's the product of avoidable adverse childhood experiences that include domestic abuse, and again, the corporal punishment and the shaming. So with this, the child basically doesn't have time to develop a healthy relationship with caretakers. And so there's very little sharing of emotions, so that emotional empathy is stifled. With emotional empathy being stifled, the child is susceptible to false narratives that are common in authoritarian cultures. And if certain groups are targeted, hatred is developed towards those groups. And if that is reinforced through repetition and coercion, this hatred may actually result in violence directed against certain targets that are established. And again, if it's a group doing that, then de-individuation, something a person might not want to do by himself, but the whole group is doing it without having that conscience and that the moral compass, may continue with the group and engage in the violent behaviors. I didn't mention permissive and uninvolved parenting, but this is a type of parenting, basically both types, where direction is not provided. So there is never confrontation, and very often emotions are not responded to at all either. And these children seem to be very much affected by an authoritarian culture and may go through the sequence also, which would be unfortunate. And that's why authoritative parenting, which has also been called lighthouse parenting or positive parenting, is really so very important. So that's a run through of my narrative. And we'll try and stop the sharing right now. We can figure out how to do that. Let's see. I think it was one of these that oh, here we go. Oh. Yeah, this is a little difficult. There, I think now we have it. Well, the sharing has stopped, I believe.
Thank you.
Dr. Sarnaik, has the sharing stopped?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. Well, now I would field any questions or any comments you might have.
First of all, wonderful presentation, so enlightening. Especially like most of our audience is going to be from India and South Asian countries, where like we have like a predominantly authoritarian parenting culture. So I hope this helps like at least a few. I would really like to ask you, Dr. Katzman, can you share something about your experience as a child versus as a parent with parenting techniques and styles? Would you like to tell us something?
I'd be happy to do that. I would just make one comment that yes, authoritarian parenting is common throughout the world. It's present in the United States too, and unfortunately has the adverse repercussions that I discussed. There are many resources, and I've listed 10 of them, which you can add to the Facebook link. And some are videos, some are books, and you just have to pick out a few of those. And I think that will really help, perhaps in a direction towards a change from authoritarian to authoritative. Yeah, I actually, it's very interesting. My grandparents on both sides lived in Belarus, which is, part of Russia there, and they were subjected to significant discrimination because of their ethnicity. which was Jewish. And they basically left because they felt their lives were in danger. And they came to Canada, actually, initially, and then later came to the United States. At that time, U.S. had quite a quota, and it was easier to get into Canada. So, and of course, they had to start from scratch. And my father was going to college. Actually, he used to go in Detroit. I don't know. There's Windsor, Ontario is on one side of the Detroit River, and Detroit, Michigan's on the other side of what's known as the Detroit River. And there never used to be a bridge connecting the two. And so my father used to talk about taking the ferry boat to school when he was going to college, and he would take that across the Detroit River. So anyways, as it turns out, his father became very sick very early and passed away from esophageal cancer. So he actually stopped going to college, and he was basically served as father for the three other siblings, and helped them progress and actually survive in times that were not so good, because you had the Depression in the 1930s and stuff. So, but that actually brought them together, and the family were always very, very close, and they were appreciative of what my father did for them. We actually lived with my grandparents for a little time, and then we moved into our own home in an area of Windsor, and I went to elementary school and high school there. And when they hit the 12th grade, my father actually had another thing happen. He had surgery. And one of the first, he had obstruction to the flow of spinal fluid in the neck. And that was very early on. I mean, this is in near the end of the 1950s, or mid-1950s. So neurosurgery was in its infancy, actually, to a significant degree at that point, but he did okay. And because of that, we moved over to Detroit, where he was working with his brother and his brother and my older brother in an accounting firm. And I went to college at Wayne State University there in Detroit. I went to undergrads and medical school there. You know, we were not wealthy by any stretch of the imagination, but I think we enjoyed life, enjoyed our culture, and I think had a fairly interesting growth and development. And I think to many degrees, I've been influenced by some of the ethics and the morals of our Jewish tradition. So that's a short synopsis.
That's wonderful. Like, it's so, inspiring, your whole story as a child, and what all you have achieved is truly amazing. I cannot even imagine having so many publications even throughout my life. So yeah, that's wonderful. So
now I'm retired, so it's easier to sit around and read books and write papers. Yeah. The clinical responsibility.
Yeah, but that's still lots of work, lots of efforts being put into it, and the fact that you're still doing it, still working in the field that you're passionate about is really amazing. So Dr. Katzman, like you said, that literacy is very important. So what I've seen, especially in the South Asian countries and where I am from in India, is that even when, we make people aware about a few things, like, for example, the harmful effects of authoritarian and the, good health effects, good mental health effects on by authoritative parenting, people are very resistant to, behavior changes. And as research suggests, South Asians are, as it is, more resistant compared to the other ethnic populations to behavior changes. So what can be done? What can I, as a lifestyle medicine physician and a counselor, what do you think I can do to, get this forward?
Yeah, well, I think when we're talking about things globally, I mean, one person can't do the job. Somehow, governments who have the resources need to be involved, need to understand the importance of the effort. And I've written two papers, fairly short papers, one on the Convention on the Rights of the Child and the other on what I called and proposed the Global Child Development Corps. And I did that, and I referred first to President John F. Kennedy's Peace Corps, which he developed, and there were people from the United States were sent all over the world. They involved in education. They were involved mainly in helping improve the skills in the economies of the country. But I don't think there was the awareness of the critical importance of parenting to start things off. And I would think that if the resources could be channeled to the development of child development teams who are familiar with the modern methods of authoritative parenting. And there are so many good resources on that presently on video and in books. And if you have a skilled team that can lecture to parents, I think that's a mechanism. Now the point is that's, it's not an easy job. It's a huge job. And you're not going to see the results tomorrow. You're going to see the results in 25 or 30 years. Now, there are two studies. One was actually done in Ypsilanti, Michigan, called the High Scope Project, which was reported a number of years ago. And then there was another project called the Brookline Project, which substantiated, corroborated the findings of the High School Project. And the findings were those that had a quality preschool experience had less crime, less drug use, more home ownership, more paying of taxes, more marriages, etc., than the control group where that preschool experience was not provided. And of course, we know the kids that don't have a significant preschool experience, don't have reading at home, they come into the kindergarten, the first grade behind, and they never catch up. They never catch up. And that's not good.
Definitely. So yeah, I mean, the topic is unending, and I can ask you so many questions and learn so much from you. But I really loved all that you just enlightened us upon. And like you said, HR, human relation programs for children in schools are so essential and need to be taken seriously throughout the globe, of course, and should be emphasized on. And like you said, internalization of repressed fear and anger, how it can manifest and affect us in the long term, even when a child goes into the teenage years or into adulthood, and even, I guess, into old age. It can really affect the mental health negatively. So I think that's very important. So so Dr. Katzman, with my personal experience, so I've had a mix of authoritative versus authoritarian parenting. So I think my mother is totally authoritative, while my dad is authoritarian. So what do you think that's gonna do to me in the long term?
Well, all I can say is you're very congenial, and it's been a pleasure talking to you, and I think you're going to do fine. And if you're aware of this situation, you're going to do something to promote improved parenting throughout the area as much as you can. I would suggest that, the American Academy of Pediatrics has a political wing. And not that it's always been effective in getting the Congress to support some of these programs, but a lot of programs have been supported because of the influence. And I think each country should have people that are aware of the importance of these kinds of initiatives, get together, learn about how your political system works, And I think that's a branch, unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, of caretaking. You have to begin to make some input and educate the politicians to the importance of this and to the importance to the country. And of course, India is a democracy. So that kind of input should be possible. I don't know if your Indian pediatric society has a political branch. Family practice should be of interest to family practice. And I remember when I was as a medical student actually writing papers. I wrote a on staphylococcal pneumonia, and most of the work was from India. And I just remember how impressed I was with the clinical acumen of the Indian clinicians. So.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, it was a great talk, Dr. Katzman, and I would like to just highlight on a few points which you told us, which are really very enlightening and eye-opening. Like, for example, children should be read to daily, to have utmost brain development. I think it's a very good point, which most of the people are not aware about. Then about the critical importance of parenting and educating the politicians, I think is very necessary, like you said. And yeah, child development teams are also very necessary, skilled teams to work on this. And I think I'm going to try my best and see what I can do at my own level and, team up with someone and work towards this cause. And yeah, thank you so much. Also, Dr. Katzman has provided me with some helpful references as well, some helpful resources as well for parents and for to-be parents. You can just refer to them and they can be really helpful for you all. So thank you, Dr. Katzman. You have been so kind to me. Thank you for accepting to do this for me in the first place and providing so many helpful resources. And I look forward to collaborate again with you someday and talk about some other issue related to parenting, some of your publications, or some other work.
Well, thanks very much for inviting me, and I've certainly enjoyed our session. I'll be happy to help out in any way that I can.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Have a good evening or have a good day. I guess it's daytime by you. It's almost time for us to go to sleep here.
So good night to you and have sweet dreams and all the best for all your coming publications.
Okay, thank you and take care. Good speaking with you.
Good speaking to you too. Bye.
All right, bye now.